Okay, so we're in Appendix C, and I've taken from Appendix C in your book. If you look at example C.7, you should see that they give you this pseudocode, and this is an example of a while loop. And what this code does is it finds the largest number in a list of numbers. So I just made up a list of 4 numbers up here, and so what I'm going to do is run through how I would trace line by line what this code is doing. And so as I run through the code, I'll kind of write down what I'm tracking with the variables that are in the code. And if you look in the notes, I've written this out word for word, but hopefully this will make a little more sense when you can hear me talking you through it. So when you're tracing through some code, you just start at the first line and work your way down. So if we start with this line, it says to set this variable large equal to S1, which is the first number in the list. So I come over and I set large equal to that number. And if I look at the next line, it says make I equal to 2. So I can put I equal to 2. And then I jump right into the while loop. And so this condition here tells you that you're going to run all of the statements in the next lines as long as this thing is true, as long as I is less than n. And right now I is equal to 2, and n is the number of numbers in my list. And so I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So n will always be 4. And so I can see that right now 2 is where I is at, and since 2 is less than or equal to 4, I continue. So I go to the next line. If s sub I, now remember I is set to 2, so this is saying if s sub 2, which is 10, I can see that over here, if s sub 2 is greater than large, which is true. If this is true, run the next line. And this is true because s sub 2 is 10 and large is 1. And so s sub 2 is greater than large. So this next line says if that's true, reset your value for large to this number, s sub 2. So I'm going to reset the value of large to 10. And the next line, this says take your variable I and make it 1 bigger. So increment I by 1. And since all of that was a part of a while loop, change colors, then I go back to the top of the while loop. So I'm going back to this line, and I'm going to see if this condition is true again. So now I is 3 right here, and n is still 4. And since 3 is less than or equal to 4, I continue again to the next line. And I do this check again. Now I is 3, so this condition is telling you to check is s sub 3 bigger than your value of large. S sub 3 is up here. It's 4, and 4 is not larger than the number 10. And so I don't do this line because that's part of the if statement, because the condition on the if statement here was not true. So I don't do this line, and I go straight to the next line, increment I by 1. So now I becomes 4, and I didn't do anything here, so I think in my notes I wrote that that's not applicable. I don't do anything there. Okay, and then we go back to the top of the while loop, so maybe if I change colors again, I'll go back to black. So I'm going back to the while loop, and I want to check my condition is this still true? Yes, it is, because I is 4 and n is 4. And notice it says less than or equal. So if I and n are equal, you still continue. Go to the next line, the if statement, and I check is s sub I, which is now s sub 4, this number 6, is 6 greater than large? Well, large is still back up here at 10, and s sub 4 is 6. So s sub 4 is not greater than large, so I don't apply that line. So again, not applying that, and I skip to the last line, which is to increment I by 1, so I becomes 5. And now finally, when I go back up to the top of the loop, so I'm coming back up to the top of the while loop, the condition in the while loop is not going to be true, because now I see that I is 5, but n is still 4, and if I is greater than n, then this condition in the while loop is not true, and you would move to the end of the while loop, but there's nothing after that, and so you're done running through the code and you're finished. And so you can see that the variable large was stuck at 10, which is the largest number in the list. So if you were running this on a computer, the computer would probably spit out the number 10 so that you would know the largest number in the list. So when I ask you to trace an algorithm, really what I'm asking to see is some kind of table like this where you sequentially run through the variables that are changing. So our algorithms will be pretty simple. So usually you just have one variable tracking either the largest or smallest number in the list, and then another one which tells you the iteration that you're on. And it is perfectly fine if you wanted to write out some words explaining your trace through the code as I did in the notes, but at the very least, I'd like to see some kind of table like I did here. So that's all for that trace, and hopefully that helps you get through those.